Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the workshop to talk about the minimum wage increase that will happen this next year, 2022. Thank you everyone for being here. I'd like to turn this over to Blake Hyatt, our Deputy Commissioner.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We've been receiving a lot of questions from folks about how this is going to work. And so we wanted to make sure to go ahead and put together an informational session. Business Services reached out to everyone that had been interested. This is actually the role of the State Department of Labor. And so Robin and Lady have graciously offered their time to help us walk through some of the changes and what to expect, how to manage things as the living wage increase sets in. If you have any questions for us, please feel free to go ahead and share them in the chat, and we'll make sure to address them as we're going through the seminar. But I'll go ahead and hand it over to Lady and Robin so they can talk us through things.
Thanks, Blake. Good afternoon. My name is Robin Felrath. I'm the Director of Downstate Labor Affairs for New York State. I want to start off by thanking Commissioner Drago, Deputy Commissioner Blake Hyatt, and the Suffolk County Department of Labor for hosting today's webinar on the New York State Minimum Wage Act and upcoming changes to the minimum wage rates for Long Island. I also want to thank everyone who's joining us to view today's presentation. I'm looking forward to the discussion after the presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Letty Escobar, who is our Supervising Labor Standards Investigators, who will be providing today's presentation.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As Robin said, my name is Letty Escobar. I'm a Supervising Labor Standards Investigator in downstate New York, specifically New York City. I am here to present the New York State minimum wage presentation, and I will go ahead and share my screen. Just one moment. Hold on. Yes, sorry about that. I have to. Are you guys able to see my presentation?
We don't see the presentation right now.
Okay, I had it. I have to go back to. We thought that we had done that already. Give me one moment.
There we go. We can see it now, Letty.
Okay. All right. Okay, now everybody can see, right?
Yes.
Okay. As part of the New York State Department of Labor, I'm here to talk to you guys about the ongoing schedule of minimum wage increases. We're going to be talking about the new rates that took effect, or that take effect, I should say, every December 31 of every year. We have been incrementally increasing the New York State minimum wage to go up to $15 per hour. New York City has already reached the threshold of $15 per hour. Long Island and Westchester is going to be increased to $15 per hour this December 31. So Suffolk County is part of Long Island, right? So employers can know and businesses can know that as of December 31 of this year, they are required to pay $15 per hour as the state minimum wage. The remainder of the state above Westchester is still less than $15 per hour, but they will be reaching that point within the next year or two. We're going to be answering your questions during the presentation, and at the end, we'll also show you the website information where all of this can be found. Here, we tell you that rates depend on work location. And I don't know, you probably have heard this before, but the reality is that the New York State minimum wage for the employee depends on where they work, not the office location. So if you have a business that is based out of New York City, but they're working in Long Island, they don't have to pay the New York City state minimum wage. And that is also vice versa. If the office is in Suffolk County, but your employee is going out to New York City, they are required to be paid at the state minimum wage from the location where they are working. Okay. Sorry. Oh, I had kind of skipped a slide. I apologize about that. Okay. Okay, so now we're talking about what are the rates, right? As you can see, in the next slide, I will be showing you, you can have the breakdown here of all the rates of pay. New York City for large businesses are businesses that are 11 or more employees, $15 an hour. Small businesses are considered any business with 10 or less employees. At this point, everybody is paid $15 per hour, so it might not seem as a relevant difference. But the reality is that there was a point where the minimum wage order changed and there was a different rate based on the size of the employer. And as of this year, Long Island and Westchester joins that. The remainder of the state is going to be 1320, as you can see. Here we are talking about the minimum wage rates for the building service industry. The building service industry covers any employer like commercial or residential where there are apartments and you are employing people to take care of the building, to manage the property. Those employees who handle complaints from the tenants or who kind of sort the garbage or take out the garbage or the recycling. Those are the employees that are covered under the building service industry. They are usually called superintendents or janitors, and here you can see the rates. Janitors are paid on a per unit basis, and the amount, as you can see, is in the middle row. For New York City is $10, and now also as of December 31st, Suffolk County, which is in Long Island, is also going to be $10 per unit. All other employees have to be paid on an hourly basis, and the minimum wage will be $15. There is a threshold, which is the $638 that you see at the top. That means that if an employee covered under the building service industry is already paid a salary that is $638 or above, the employer doesn't necessarily have to go. I'm going to give you an example. If there happened to be a building in Suffolk County that had 70 units, by $10, it would cover $700. But if they paid a salary of $638, the employer would be covered. That is a weekly minimum that the employer is allowed to pay. Now we're going to talk about if an employee receives tips. Let's remember that tip workers are minimum wage employees. So when the minimum wage goes up, their wages are also increased, or the tipped rate per se is also increased. We're talking about the cash wage rates per hour for tipped workers. We have tipped workers in each and every industry. We have the hospitality industry, the miscellaneous industries industry, and you can look at the different rates. These rates may be called a cash wage, a tip rate, a service rate, a waitress wage. Essentially, all those different names amount to the same thing. It's the same job. And these are the rates that an employer is obligated to pay, assuming that the employee earns enough in tips. Employers always have some type of obligation to pay the wages to tip workers. There is no such thing as a tips only job. You can see the wages or the rates for the other categories. And we'll get into the specifics for those categories soon. For now, I'm just going to mention the difference in the wage rates on the last 2 lines, and depending on the average weekly tips earned by the employee. As you can see, for hospitality, a waitress right now, the state minimum wage would be $10 per hour. considering that the employee receives at least $5 in tips per hour. For hospitality service, and you might ask, what is the difference between food service and service? And I hope, I'll talk about that later on with the next slide. Miscellaneous industries are nail salons, car washes, anything that's not covered under hotel or restaurant. And there was a threshold for it. But as you can see here, there is no what we would call tip credit as of December 31st, 2020. That was eliminated with the wage order. Employers are not allowed to take a tip credit. Employers are required to pay the $15 minimum wage. Okay, now we're going to talk about tipped workers in the miscellaneous industry. As a reminder, these employees are employees who are regularly tipped and who work in a non-hospitality industry. And not only do they include nail salons, and they also include hair salons, car washes, valet parking attendants, whether they work at the mall or at a hospital, because we see that here on Long Island. Okay, as I mentioned before, as of December 31, 2020, an employer in the miscellaneous industry cannot take any tip credit and must pay the full applicable minimum wage. For the hospitality industry, we'll be talking about tipped workers in the hospitality industry. These are employees who are regularly tipped, working in hotels, restaurants, and in the catering business. Okay, the chart here shows the minimum wage and tip credits for employees in the hospitality industry. A food service worker is a server, bus person, bartender, food runner, etc. That's what a food service worker is considered. A service employee in the hospitality industry can be a housekeeper, a delivery person, a valet. The top line of the minimum wage employees in those regions of the state must receive, as you can see, that it's the state minimum wage applies to everybody. But if you look at the second row, you can see the allowable tip credit. For food service worker is $5 an hour. Okay, therefore the employer is able to pay $10 per hour as long as the employee is receiving at least $5 per hour in tips. There is a requirement from the Department of Labor that the employer can prove that the employee is receiving those $5 in tips as a minimum in order for them to take that tip credit. For service employees, the tip credit is lower. As you can see, the tip credit is only $2.50 in Suffolk County, and therefore the employer would be required to pay $12.50. Okay, how does the minimum wage affect the overtime rate of pay? When it comes to the overtime, most workers are entitled to overtime pay if they work more than 40 hours per week. And overtime is calculated at 1.5 times the regular rate of pay. If the rate is higher than the minimum wage, or if it's the minimum wage, you calculate 1.5 times of the minimum wage. Some employees are only entitled to overtime at 1.5 times the minimum wage, but not all. And I would say that is actually less than. Most employees are owed more if they are paid at above the minimum wage. So we'll take a look at the overtime rates. As you can see here, it's a simple calculation. It just shows you that you take the employee's rate of pay. Here we're using the state minimum wage, and you multiply it by 1.5. So if you're paying your employee $15, any hours that are over 40 in a work week have to be paid at $22.50. Now we're talking about overtime for administrative and executive employees. This is a quick review. There is an exemption from overtime pay for administrative and executive employees. The definition and the requirements to see if an employee is administrative or an executive are included in the wage order. And the employer would have to be able to fulfill all of those requirements in order to say an employee is administrative or executive. But one of those requirements here is shown here, which is a salary. If an employer wants to consider an employee administrative and or executive, they would have to pay a minimum salary of $1,125 per week. So just as an example, if they pay $1,130 per week and that person works over 40 hours and they meet all of the other criteria, that employee would be considered exempt of overtime payments. Okay. Okay, so just to review, businesses must always pay at least the state minimum wage for all hours worked. They are required to keep accurate time and payroll records, and I will add that they have to be contemporaneous, which means that they have to be kept while it's going on. It's not something that you can kind of make up or create after the fact. Employers must provide employees with pay notices and wage statements. Employers must pay additional wages if employees don't earn enough in tips each week. And that's kept as part of the time and payroll records. Employers must pay overtime to all eligible employees. And employers must not retaliate against employees who make a complaint. Okay, employees must be permitted to ask questions regarding their wages and their hours, and they should be able to make complaints. As we've said, all this information is available at any time on our website. If you go to our website, we'll see the link at the end, but I can tell you now it's dol.ny.gov. If you go along the top teal border, you will see the title that says Workforce Protections. You will click on that, and then you will go down to select minimum wage. That gives you the drop-down menu, or it gives you other options, but here you can see an overview. This is a screenshot of what the website shows, and it tells you the timeline of how each section of New York State has reached the $15. Currently, up until December 30, Long Island and Westchester is at the rate of $14, and you can see that there in the table. Okay, if you scroll down further, like I mentioned before, you're going to be able to see tabs for different topics. And it's going to mention the wage orders. The wage orders are the legal documents where the law is contained. You will be able to see that in summary format, which is just one page, and it shows you the state minimum wage. It shows you the tip credits, and there is a summary and a wage order for each of the industries that I discussed today. In addition to, there's one for farm workers, and because we have areas of the state where there are farms, and I know Suffolk County has that. Which, by the way, it was not included in these slides, but I will mention, since it's Suffolk County and there are farm workers, their difference in overtime for farm workers is that employers don't have to pay overtime after 40 hours. Employers have to pay overtime for farm workers after 60 hours. Okay, but the website includes all the required posters that should be provided at the work location or the business for employees to see. One of those is the minimum wage poster. Every business should have that poster set up where the employees can be informed as to what the state minimum wage should be for them. We also have on our website a page of frequently asked questions, and these are specific to the minimum wage. Any business can go to the website and see if their question in particular is already addressed there. Just, if you have like a quick question, you can do a search and you can look there and see if it's there. Additionally, we also have a minimum wage lookup tool, and this is so workers can determine exactly how much they should make based on the type of job that they do. There are drop-down menus and questions that they can answer, and then the tool will help them obtain the final answer as to what rate they should be receiving. And you could, you could get that also from the main page. Here we have the easy to remember link, which will get you directly to the minimum wage, which is labor.ny.gov/minimum wage. This is going to redirect you to the second link. So that's why I also included the second link, because that's also part of, the new website that's being, that was updated. And you can see it there if you want to make a note of it. And I'll give it just a few seconds so anyone could write it down and take a note. Okay. Here is our contact information. If you would like to ask a question, you can always email the department at info.nysdol@labor.ny.gov. We also have a contact center where we can answer your questions. The calls are usually routed to an investigator, and mostly to an investigator that is in the location where you are, so that you don't have a business from Buffalo or, getting an investigator from downstate. We try to route the calls in that way. So you can see the number here, 888-4-NYSDOL. Okay. I am going to stop sharing now, and I guess we can proceed with the questions and answers, or I'll leave this up. Just one moment.
Thank you so much, Letty. If anyone has any questions, you can enter it into the chat and we can relay it to Letty or Robin.
While we're waiting for that, Letty, Robin, I just wanted to thank you for the time that you've taken to put together this presentation. For everybody that's on the call, our Department of Business Services here in Suffolk County our specific role is to support you in managing your hiring needs, and to make sure to put together seminars like this one if there are any specific questions or challenges that you're facing. As you can see, we have contact information for our partners in New York State, and they stand by to help you specifically with the living wage increase issue that or living wage increases that we're looking toward in the next year. That said, if you're currently facing hiring challenges, as we know many of your businesses are, our Department of Small Business Services here in the department will be able to support you by putting together job fairs, by pulling job orders and helping to recruit against those job orders. And when I say job order, what that basically means is if you have open positions, we can reach out to folks that have skill sets that match with that work to help you with your recruitment. We have a variety of other tools that are at our disposal to be able to help you as well. I'm seeing some questions come up in the chat now. Lady Robin, I'll defer to you to be able to speak to some of these questions.
Sure. So Letty, we have a question here. Do teachers have different minimum wage salary requirements?
Okay, so teachers are part of what we discussed as exempt employees because, well, I actually only mentioned the executive and administrative, but they would also fall under the category of an exemption under a professional. And the minimum wage order also has the criteria there. One of the criteria is, do they require, you know, a degree or advanced study, which teachers in fact do. You know, they're getting their bachelor's, they're getting their master's. There is a minimum salary requirement. The only thing I can also say about that is that teachers are also usually covered by a collective bargaining agreement. So, you know, the district that hires them, or even the school, if it's a private school, has to adhere, well, I should correct myself. The district should adhere to the collective bargaining agreement. And they all have to be better, or at least what the minimum wage order requires. And the same goes for a private school.
And Letty, that exemption amount was $1,250 a week. Is that correct?
No, 1125 right now, but it's
sorry.
gonna,
Thank
it's
you.
gonna go up to 1125. Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then Blake, I think there's a question from Rite Aid that says, are there any resources to help specifically out in Southampton? I think that might be directed to your comment just about business services just now.
Yep. So, you know, I think it depends on what resources you might need. Definitely there are resources, right? So we can support with your hiring needs. We can support with on-the-job training. We can support with creating awareness about hiring opportunities that you might have. It depends on how many roles you need. It depends on what kinds of roles you need, but we can definitely support a variety of services that we can help with. And Michelle just put information into the chat. The phone number for our business services unit is 631-853-6613. You can feel free to call us. We'll be happy to look into your specific issues and find the right resources for you. That applies to everybody that's on the seminar and anybody else that is a business owner in Suffolk County. We're happy to support. Are there any other questions that anyone has? Michelle, while we're at it, can you drop the general email for the business services unit in the chat as well?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Robin, Lady, was there anything else that you need to clarify or add to this presentation?
I think that was it. Blake, do you have any questions or comments from Suffolk DLL standpoint?
No, nothing from our end. I think, you know, I mean, you've given out information on where all the things that were presented here can be found on your website. So, you know, I mean, that from our perspective, we wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity to be able to present this information to everybody and that they could follow up with your team. So I think we've met our goal here.
Excellent. Yes. Thank you again for hosting and allowing us to present today.
Thank you for taking the time. Thank you everyone for joining us. And again, you know, we're happy to support. If anything comes up, please feel free to reach out to our team. Have a good day, everyone.